what happened? Well, after the shooting the Archduke Franz Ferdinand, I'll just scroll back, this happened. The alliances all kicked off, apart from Britain. So you now had Austria, Germany at war with Serbia and Russia, and France has now declared war on Germany and Austria-Hungary. Britain is not in this at the moment. So, what was Germany's plan? Well, they had one plan, and it was a guy called Alfred von Schlieffen, and he was a general, and it was designed in about 1904, so it was already 10 years. No, even earlier than that. I think it was about the 1890s. My apologies. So this plan was well out of date before they'd even started. They had one plan. They had no flexibility. It had to go right, and if it didn't, they were all going to be in massive trouble. So Schlieffen was war minister. Oh, I was right. In 1905, he drew up a war plan in preparation for an attack against the French. So he did not want to fight Russians on one front in the east and France on the other front, the western and the eastern front, because that would have meant dividing his army. So he had a great plan. He thought those Russians, they're a bit useless. They couldn't organise a party in a balloon factory. So what he thinks is, we'll go over there. We'll send 90%. What we'll do is we'll go over there. We'll send a holding force, 10% of our army. We'll just keep them busy because they'll take so long to get organised. That's not going to be a problem. And then we'll take 90% of our army. We'll swing through Belgium. We'll say, look, dear King of Belgium, please let us through. When we defeat the French, we'll give you some land out of it. We'll give you a good deal if you just let us come through. So they sent 90% of their army through Belgium with the idea of circling France in a pincer movement and smashing France within 6 weeks. Take France out of the picture. Britain will never get involved because they don't think they want to get involved anyway. And then they'll take that army all the way across to the other 10%, and then 100% of the German army will then smash the Russians. Great plan. He thought it would take 6 weeks for Russia to mobilise. Again, they were sort of a little bit backwards. Didn't really have much equipment. They weren't on a war footing as such, and they're a huge country. They've got huge resources, but pulling it all together in a short space of time would have been difficult. And they thought that France could easily be defeated in 6 weeks. Remember in the Second World War, it wasn't around that. So perhaps these ideas aren't as mad as we think they are. Belgium, they thought, would not resist. They thought they'd get a really good deal, so they would take that by gaining some land off the French in any forthcoming peace treaty. And they thought that Britain would remain neutral. Again, the Kaiser said Britain will never go to war over a scrap of paper. That was the Treaty of London, which the British had signed. That Belgium, which was then a new country in about 1830, anyone attacked it, we would go to their defence. Another signatory of that was the Kaiser's grandfather. So Germany had also signed the Treaty of London as well. But, the Kaiser thought, then Britain, the tiny little army, they're not going to mess with us. They'd just be ridiculous. They'll just want to sit on their island, play with their boats. That was his plan. So, here it is in a visual. So, the reason they go through Belgium is because after the 1871 war, the French built a load of fortress towns, and a head-on attack into those would have been nigh on suicide. So they just go round. Much more sensible. And then in a pincer movement, they go around, take the capital, Paris. Paris would fall. When Paris falls, France falls. And that would be the end of it. 6 weeks, scoot along over to the other side of the continent and tackle Russia. Britain will just be waving, looking rather worried, but won't do anything. Now, 2nd of August 1914, the German army invade Luxembourg and Belgium as the plan had advertised. The Germans were held up by the British Expeditionary Force. So the British, actually, as soon as the Belgians were invaded, declared war on Germany. It wasn't the alliance system that got them in the war in the first place. It was the fact that the Germans had gone through Belgium, the Belgians had put up a fight, and then the British had come to Belgium's aid. Britain entered the First World War to save Belgium. Britain arrived very, very quickly on motorised transport. and they fought a rearguard action at the Battle of Mons, and they retreated from there, but held up. Very, very, very key. Although we weren't winning necessarily, we managed to hold up the German army just enough that it allowed Russia time to get mobilised. Russia were meant to mobilise in 6 weeks. Due to railways and the speed and efficiency of the new railways in Russia, they managed to do it in just 10 days. So not only were they being held up by the British and the Belgians and the French on the Western Front, but now they were having to take some of their resources from that fight and move it over to the Eastern Front. So it looked as if the Western Front was going to go nowhere. Germany were met by the French at the Battle of the Marne, which halted the German advance. And as a result, they thought, well, there's nothing doing here, we'll dig in. And that's exactly what they did. So, why did they dig in? These things. Most people think of the First World War and they think that machine gun fire killed most people. No, it wasn't even rifles. They probably accounted for about 1 million deaths. Whereas these things, high explosive shrapnel shells, killed over 6 million. Why? Well, as you can see, they are high explosive shells. They can be fired very accurately over a target, and they have a timer on them. When that timer goes off, you can see the timer just up here right at the top. Then the shell casing made of shrapnel. Now this is named after Major Shrapnel, who invented it. This would blow up and fragment, and inside you would find about 400 or so ball bearings that would explode out of the top of this and spread over a wide area. It's because of this type of artillery that 250,000 Brits came home without arms or legs or faces from this war. It was a hugely destructive weapon, increasing firepower. So people dug in. They went to ground. Bullets were responsible for 39% of wounds. Machine guns could fire the Maxim. This is 450, but I know the Maxim the German machine gun could fire up to 600. Rifles could actually fire up to 500 metres. The rifle that you can see here is the world famous Lee Enfield 303 short, which was the standard issue weapon for the British and was a tremendous fighting weapon actually. Really good. But it was shells that were just so dangerous. That's why they had to get their heads down. Being exposed in open ground was suicide. You dive and dig in. And what they did is they dug in. And as they met here, and then what they did is they tried to outflank each other, which is get round the side of each other. So what they realised they had to do is dig 2 massive lines of trenches. So where the British fought in Belgium, up here, this place called Ypres, they started digging trenches, and it was called a race to the sea. Who could get there first? The British wanted the ports because they were worried that if the Germans had the ports, such as Ostend, they would send their U-boats out and sink all of our shipping, which they sunk about 1 in 4. So the British were always fighting in this area. There were 3 main battles at Ypres to take this ground, to get to these ports, to try and stop that from happening. And then here we get down, and then we get to the Battle of Loos, and then Arras, Vimy Ridge, where the Canadians fought. And then we come down Bapaume, still British. This is the River Somme. In the 1st of July 1916, the Battle of the Somme, in the first hour from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. there were 20,000 killed, wounded or injured. The worst morning of the British Empire, double that by the end of the day. Here's Compiègne, where the armistice was actually signed, way back from the lines. But down here at Verdun, this is where some of the biggest, most ferocious fighting took place, and this is where the French took over, and their line extended all the way down to neutral Switzerland. So you have 450 miles of opposing trenches where you have 2 vast armies facing one another, practically stuck, because you've dug into these trenches. They're very static. You can launch an attack, but if you come up above open ground, you're exposed to artillery fire, you're exposed to machine gun fire, and as you will see when I start talking about the Battle of the Somme another time, the the risk to and the numbers of casualty are just simply ferocious. Okay. And this is what the trenches look like. Now, these are my holiday snaps. These are down here in Verdun, where the Germans faced off against the French. And these are German trenches. We know they're German trenches because they're really good quality. If you went over the ridge here and you went to look at the French trenches, you would see that they are mainly just slits in the ground. And there was a good reason for this. The Germans knew that they were going to be stuck. They didn't have the manpower because the Eastern Front had opened up so much earlier than they thought, and they'd had to send troops over to Russia. So they built quite large, comfortable trenches. Very, very safe, very deep, very, very protected with underground bunkers. So this is an entrance to an underground bunker. Now, I couldn't go down because it was too dangerous, but I have been to examples of such and been in them. They're about 30 feet down. There are hospitals down there. There are mess rooms down there, sleeping accommodation. So even during some of the most horrific bombardments, although people down there, even some accounts saying the rats were driven mad, but at least they were relatively safe. Very, very defensive. The French trenches were very much more like slits. The reason being is they wanted the French to always be attacking. It's why the German uniform was grey, blended in with the ground. The French uniform was sky blue, because the French always said, this is our territory, we want you off, and we don't want you to get too comfortable in these trenches. We want to keep that offensive fighting spirit. And the French, Germans and British lost hugely during this war. It was a terrifying experience for many, many millions of men on all sides. And in my next little video that I'll do for you about the Somme in particular, I'll go over what some of the battles were like, how they shipped the wounded out through the chain of evacuation, and this will hopefully help your understanding of the war. Alright, so I'm going to try and stop this recording now. Thank you very much.